Good morning, everyone. Welcome. 3, 2, 1, we're off today. For those of you that were able to get into the presentation, there was a strategy called 3, 2, 1, which is 3 types of verbal responses, then 2 ways that you're using them, and 1 question you still have. And we'll do some responses here in a little bit with that, but that is a strategy that you can use in your classroom. Welcome and good morning again. My name is Greg Betts and I'm the Director for Professional Learning.
And I'm Jen Sinclair. I'm the teacher leader at Hillside. Our agenda today, we are going to review back to our core responses, and I know lots of you have really actively been incorporating those in your classroom. And later today we get to celebrate and see some of the ways people are incorporating those. So we'll do a little review of verbal responses, then we will go on to written responses, which many or all of you already use in your classroom. We're just going to hone in and focus on it a little bit more and tighten it up. So we'll talk about when to use written responses, types of written responses, and tips for written responses. And then at the end, we'll talk about a response slate procedure, which, how many of you have whiteboards and have used those for like ages in your classroom? Yeah, so I mean, that's just that, just firming that up, making that more purposeful, and then we will close together.
Again, here are our working agreements, and the one I really want us to focus on today is the one about being present. That's paying attention to yourself and others. I did have you get out your technology. At this point, we aren't going to need technology for a little bit, so if you would, please close your lids or shut your iPads down. Also, if there's someone next to you who's disengaging, one of the ideas behind being present is helping our neighbors and our fellow teachers to be present with us. So, again, we continue to see this slide because we want to reinforce that we are continuing to build on the foundation, and it's the foundation that builds into everything else we do. And so thinking about part of the strategic plan, going back on a survey from last spring was one of the identifiers for us that we needed to increase our being intentional about eliciting student responses. And so that goes in with good teaching and builds on the foundation of our strategic plan.
Okay, so our goal today, if you would humor me again and read the red words with me, our goal is to increase student learning through active participation by using strategies
consistently
and
purposefully
to increase the frequency of student responses. So our goal, we have a nice visual, while hand raising and individual responses has its place absolutely in our classroom, we are really working towards shifting our practices to more of the whole group conversation, more students more of the time. That's our focus, more students more of the time. So if you would take a moment and reflect on your current practices, look at the sentence stems, you're going to choose one, and then when we signal, you will turn and talk to a partner. So real quick, will you pair up with a neighbor, decide today who's going to be super, and decide who's going to be awesome. So as many of you, if not all of you know, we had the state of Nebraska visit us last spring. And when they did their MTSS walkthrough, one of the pieces of feedback we got as a district is that overwhelmingly we have students individually responding. They noticed that we spend most of our time on average having just individual students talking. And so as we know, if we're only having 1 out of 20 or 22 kids talking, we're really doing a disservice to the other kids. So that's the reason why we're focusing on it. So if you would look at this rubric, and you've already focused and pushed this year really hard to increase opportunities to respond. So the top part of this rubric is your knowledge. Where are you at with your knowledge in regards to active participation? We're going to have you reflect and indicate that in your handout. It's on the second page. The bottom part is how often do you use it currently in your classroom? So take a moment, reflect, and mark, give yourself a grade on the rubric.
good reminder, don't forget to have your students self-assess. Most of the time, students are pretty accurate about where they're at. And as we continue also to learn more about the framework for teaching from Charlotte Danielson, one of the areas on there for proficient to excellent teacher is, does the teacher provide opportunities for the students to self-assess? All right, so we are going to practice here. No dancing. I promised Darren Fulker we would not have dancing today, so he was very excited about that. In your class, many times you have students help you out, and one of those jobs that you could assign a student is that of timer. So today I have assigned someone to be timer. Jen Sinclair will be our timer. And my goal is to model for you different types of responses, and we're going to record as a group how long that takes us, and then see if we get to about 2 responses per minute. All right, so if you would up here as I read the top paragraph, follow along with me, and then when I pause, please fill in the word that I'm pausing on. So all students have the opportunity to respond, verbal, written, or action, a minimum of 2 times per minute during teacher-led instruction. How many times should students be responding? 2. If you would, please silently read the bottom paragraph to yourself. I'm now going to ask for a thumbs up, thumbs down, or sideways about how comfortable you feel with the statements in that paragraph. So if you would, please, when I say show me, give me thumbs up, thumbs down, or sideways about how comfortable you feel with that statement. And show me. Okay. Now what I'd like you to do, out of the 3 types of responses, verbal, written, or action, which one do you use the most in your classroom? So this is a self-assessment. So thinking about it, which one do you use the most? Please write it down on your paper and then put your pencil down when you're finished, and that'll let me know when everyone's ready to move on. Okay, Jen, stop the timer. One minute, 43 seconds. Okay, so pretty brisk pace, not overwhelming, and you had 5 opportunities to respond in that minute and 43 seconds. We had 2 choral readings, 1 choral response when I said how many times per minute. I had an action response where you gave me thumbs up, thumbs down, or sideways, and 1 written response. Now I will tell you, the concept of all those is pretty easy. Not hard to do a choral read, not hard to do a pause, not hard to ask for a response, not hard to ask for an action. But I'll tell you, when I was going through this, being intentional about putting those in there, that took a little bit of work. And if you think about that, that's where the difficulty comes in, or some of the roadblocks. It's not that you don't believe it, it's not that it's not easy by itself, but putting it in order and being intentional about it does take a little bit of work. Later on, we're going to see a video of some teachers using some of these strategies from our district. And my conversation with them is, after they practiced it, it just becomes second nature. But if you haven't practiced it yet, it does take a little bit of work. So I thought for me it was good to practice this, to put it down on paper, to say, okay, the concepts are easy, but being intentional about it does take planning and some work.
Okay, so this is just a review. We've talked about this the last 2 times. So active participation should allow adequate thinking time, involve all students, structured and safe. And we want to hold kids accountable. They're not responding just for the sake of responding. It is purposeful, and we want to make sure that we're following up, offering feedback, and checking their progress. We're going to take a look at what you responded as you came in today.
Come on, internet.
A lot of choral response. You see a lot of think, pair, share, exit slips, which we'll talk about today.
The idea behind this is we have been intentional about not using technology, and today we felt like it's time to bring out the technology piece, because we wanted to show that technology is a tool to help leverage learning. This is a way that this would be considered written response that we're going to get into here. It's a way to gather feedback, it's a way to gather data from your students. it is easy to do. You send out the link, you have a couple questions, and then you can show the class what everyone's thinking. Intentionally, we did not want your name up here, we just wanted the building, because now what we'll do is some of these responses, coaches and building admin design teams will be able to use some of your responses per your building. So thinking about your classroom, if you're looking for input from students to have them self-assess to see where you're at, it's a really easy way to make a Google survey. Students, I mean, you can make it as difficult or easy as you want on that, but we wanted to show you that we can have 4 different buildings do it at once.
The use of structured poll responses when answers are
short
and the
same.
We can use them for recall and rehearsal of
facts
or for a quick
review.
Make sure you provide adequate meaning. Time. Students may indicate this with, like Greg modeled earlier, the low thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways thumb, or simply by giving you visual cue. You can use partner responses when answers are long and
different,
and for foundational or
higher order
questions. Sharing with the partner first elicits higher quality answers because students have had time and a chance to rehearse their answers and an opportunity for feedback.
So when to use written responses? We have really focused on the verbal responses, and as we start to move in here, we want to really build on the foundation and knowledge you already have about written responses, and just be clear about a couple of our procedures and intent. Written responses, we can use them for many different things, whether it's a short response or we are really wanting to see students thinking and having them put their ideas down on paper, or or using an iPad or your computer. The one at the bottom, I would really encourage you to use that if you are looking for quick responses for 100% of all students to be correct. When you think about using a whiteboard or a slate board or your iPad, it is a great way to do a quick formative check and look for all students being correct. All right, with some of the internet problems, I'm just going to... So let's think about types of written responses. And if you would, take a minute to read the slide and think about a few of the types of written responses that you use in your class. Again, up there, the reason response slates and cards is in bold is we are going to go deeper into that one. But thinking about written responses, it's important to know there are multiple types and different ways to do a written response. And being intentional and being the expert in the classroom, that is your role then to decide what is the best response to use, when is it the right time, and then how are you going to use the data that you get from their responses.
Okay, so some tips, and you might have other tips that you could share with your team. Of course, we would account for handwriting. You know, a kindergarten written response is very different from a 6th grade written response. So the fluency at which our students can write is important. Remembering that we want to fill the void, students will find something else to do with their time. So making sure that you're either having a very short response or an internal response, which is just keep going until I tell you to stop. And then also just making sure that you're providing that feedback for the students. So you're checking it, providing the feedback, and you have some sort of routine in place.
And thinking about if you are a specials teacher, I have not been to a specials class where I haven't seen a teacher using written responses. Whether it's music, PE, Spanish, art, there's always opportunities to do written responses.
Here's a challenge though. Could you have students that wrote very rapidly versus other students who took an inordinate amount of time to write exactly the same answer down? Could it happen? Yes or no? Yes. Absolutely. Fluency of handwriting, sometimes in a lesson, not doing independent work, but in a lesson, makes written responses more difficult. And so we have to sort of gauge the amount of time that we are going to need for a response. and so that we can avoid students being early finishers. Because if there's early finishers, now they have a void. They have nothing to do. And is it possible that some students might fill that void? Yes or no, everyone? Yes. And I know some of you are new teachers starting out this year. And here's what I can guarantee if you're a new teacher. The universe will send you a student that has an advanced void filler repertoire. Yes. I started my career 46 years ago, but I can still remember Andrew Hoskins. I remember where he sat. I remember what he wore. I remember what he did. And about 20 years after I had him as a student, I went to train teachers in a district, and there was this really handsome young man, and it said Andrew Hoskins. And I went up to him and looked at him, and he said, without me saying anything, I got better. So, one of the biggest management tools for us to remember is avoid the void, for they will fill it. And that is the problem. So we could, to avoid the void on written responses, we could make the responses fairly short. Now let me give you a perfect example. Let's say I'm teaching a math lesson, and I've done demonstration, I've done guided practice, and now I'm going to check understanding, and I put 6 problems on the screen. But this student is so good in math that you're able to solve every problem 1 minute before your peers are done. You are good at math, aren't you? And so now if there's 6 problems up there, this little mental math, and she finishes every problem 1 minute before her peers, how much waiting time would she have, everyone? 6 minutes. But if I only put up 1 problem on the screen, how much waiting time would she have? 1 minute. There's a huge difference between 6 minutes of waiting time and 1 minute. 6 minutes, we'll see her entire repertoire of inappropriate behavior. Actually, you have none. A goody-goody for life, I know. But in 1 minute, she's just thinking what she might do. So it really is a management concern here. So give 1 problem and then give the kids feedback. So they're even going to have more accurate responses on the remaining 5 because of the feedback. Another possibility is to make the written response eternal. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I've done it with you all day. When I asked you to brainstorm, I didn't say write 3 ideas down. Because if I had done that, would we have had early finishers, yes or no? Yes. And then I would have had management problems. Well, no, but there would be a void and you might fill in. So I said, write ideas until I say stop. And Harrison, you might write 23 ideas down. Justin, you might have 50 ideas. Sue, you might have 3. But they would be involved the whole time. Okay? So this is really something you have to think about is, how am I going to avoid the void, either by making the responses short or making them, what, everyone? Eternal. Just need to reduce the number of kids who are going ahead. Now, how can we do that? Well, you just give them a directive so that you could say, write this down, and when you're done, put your pencil down. See the
Okay, this time, Austin, you'll go first. Choose one of these stems you'd like to respond to.
In the last 10 minutes, we are going to review Slate, response Slate procedure, and have an opportunity to watch our own staff using some of the verbal, written, and action responses. So up here, here's just a nice reminder when you're doing a response slate that you definitely want to have a routine. You want to give a signal, and you want to make sure that what you're doing has a purpose. Now, before I said tip, it's actually TAP, topic, audience, purpose. So when you're thinking about that, what is your topic, what is your audience, what's your purpose, that if you're looking for something quick, that you always want to be able to give a response to your students. So don't just do it for fun. have a purpose for why you're doing it. Here's some quick examples of teachers in our district using written responses. Hillside 3rd grade, Westgate 1st grade. They already have some sentence starters in there. Westbrook has a program where they're sending some different types of response slates home, and parents and grandparents are using them with their kids. Here you can see 6th grade Oakdale using their iPads. 2nd grade Oakdale is using the Seesaw app for written responses, and then at the middle school in German, they are using whiteboards. So when using response slates, we want to make sure that the one I just want to focus on is correct the errors. When we do that, we are looking to see where all of our students are at. And we want to make sure as teachers that we are correcting any incorrect responses. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one practice. If you would please get out your iPad. So we are going to do one response, Twitter quite a bit, to communicate to parents and students. So a factual question, I'm going to the bottom, and the factual question is, what is one word or symbol that represents the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to you? I will give you 30 seconds, and then I will ask for a signal, show me, and then I will have everyone hold up your response. And show me. That's fantastic. Well done. Well done.
Okay, so we just did it together. So you saw that all of you were able to respond, all of you were able to participate, definite benefit. The increased achievement, and the reason why we say increased achievement, what we mean is everyone's doing it, we're checking it immediately, and we provide that corrective or affirmative feedback right away. So that increases the learning, increases the proficiency, and then also decreased off-task or disruptive.
So again, to come back to our district goal is it's possible. You can do it. It does take some work. It does mean being intentional about your planning, practicing, even in your PLC, but it's possible to do. And we can do 2 responses per minute. The goal for other studies is to get between 30 and 40 responses per 10 minutes of teacher-led instruction. We're starting with about 20 responses per 10 minutes. So when you think about this goal, think about teacher-led instruction. We're really continuing to focus on all students responding, and we haven't given you a goal yet, so we felt it was time to bring out that goal for the district. In the next video is going to help wrap up our morning. Here are some video look-fors. Students raising hands, and the teacher obviously has a procedure in place to not call them students raising hands. Teachers using a thinking signal. When students are responding by themselves, watch the proximity of the high school teachers walking around. And then at the end, you can see what it might look like in a classroom that's doing a little more personalized learning.
Guten Tag, Klasse. Guten Tag, Frauchen. Setzen Sie sich. Ladies, Jedi, Ninja, Jedi, Ninja. Okay, Jedis, raise your hands. Say Jedi's rule. Jedi's rule.
You are done by closing your iPad. All right, here's your direction. Here's your direction. Number 1, you're going to put your iPad at your table. Put your iPad at your table. Okay, so iPad at the table. Then you're saying when I tell you to, we will do that, but not quite yet. All right, our learning goal for today is I can respond to a story. Say it with me. I can respond to a story. I saw some people do that, but I didn't see everyone do that with me. So let's try that again. I can respond to the story. Nice job. We've been talking about responding this week and last week. So think in your brains right now. Think in your brains. When we are responding.
Ow.
What word?
Rounded.
Yes, rounded. Next word, what sound? What word?
Swirl.
Yes, swirl. Next word, what sound?
All.
What word?
Almost.
Yes, almost. Next word, what sound?
Just share with me what you have down now in those blanks for your 7 questions there.
And so as I go through this, I'm going to read the paragraph one more time. This time, rather than this being individual, I want you to respond with me. So when we get to the blank, I'm going to go like this, maybe possibly say everyone, right? And then I just want you to share what you have down on your piece of paper in the Common Era. Good. CE then refers to the
Common Era.
Okay.
Now you're just doing alphabetic competition.
Also see our clock up here. Can everybody give me thumbs up if you can see those things? Okay? If you're the super partner, will you please raise your hand? Hands down. If you're awesome partner, raise your hand. Excellent.
Words written in green can remind us, what does that mean if the word's written in green? You all read it with me. Okay? So if the word's written in green, you all read it with me.
Strategy.
To collect
Key.
words and
Phrases.
In just a minute, I'm going to ask the peanut butters to start first, and I want you to name one of the text features that you saw, and then jellies, you go and go back and forth until you're all out of text features that you saw.
One half or 2/3? Think in your head which one you would pick. The person I pick needs to be able to explain why they knew that. Okay, have a quick talk with your neighbor and see if they agree with you. One. 0. Alicia, I liked your answer. Can you tell me what side this one goes on and why?
Your feedback from the paragraph you wrote, we were like forced this past Saturday. So you guys on there, you can revise it if you want. So you can look at that. I think here, but this is just the backstory. Okay.
Right, a round of applause for our teachers who are in there.
Take a minute to read this. This will prepare you for January 27th.
Okay.
All right. Your exit ticket today, which you will actually give to your building principal in the room. Choose 3 of these. It's the last page of your handout. Write your name on it. Choose 3 to respond to. And then as you leave, please find your building admin and hand it to him or her.
And that is your exit out the door this morning. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for your participation.